Welcome back, everyone. It is Sunday sit-down time. Joining me tonight, your go-to guy for play-by-play on SEC Network, Tom Hart. Tom, how you doing? I'm sure it's been a busy few weeks. We were just talking before we got started here.
Oh, I'm fantastic. It's my favorite time of year. Like, we just made that transition for the most part from college football into college basketball. And, for a guy who grew up going to games in the Hearn Center and watching Norm's Tigers, college basketball is always going to be very near and dear to my heart. So I'm lucky that I get actually paid to watch it and go to games these days. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, remind everyone, which Mizzou games did you get to call this year? I'm sure they've heard you the past few weeks here.
Well, I had the pleasure to do the bragging rights game for the first time in St. Louis. I know it was really cold, but the place was packed, and Missouri played really well. So that was a fun one. And then I also did the Kansas game, but we can just fast forward through that, right? We don't need to talk about that game.
Let's talk about something else. We're not even going to mention it, right? Well, you've seen them a couple times now. Kind of give me your overall thoughts on what you've seen from this team. Obviously, a much different group than we saw last year.
Yeah, I think the person that I've really zeroed in on and focused on in terms of not the overall team success, but I think the program success is what Kobe Brown's done. You know, what he did with those back-to-back 30-point games in big games, too. I mean, the Illinois game, I said this during the telecast, was the best game that he's played in a Missouri uniform, and he's been surrounded by great players. He's always had the potential to be the best player on the floor, and that night he was. And so to show that that wasn't just a one-off and he was able to repeat it the next time out against Kentucky, which was also obviously another huge win for the program, I was just tickled. I mean, he's a great guy. He's got immense talent. He's been through the ups and downs and the roller coasters of any college basketball player that's had to deal with COVID, but also coaching changes, wins, losses, blowouts. And so I was really happy to see the basketball gods smile on him and have him, play so well for a couple of games back to back. Demoy Hodge, right off the bat, I think, showed that this team was a team to be reckoned with because they're a great shooting team, and he's a fearless shooter. And I think those two combined give Missouri some weapons offensively that, let's be honest, in the SEC this year, it's more dominated by defense. So there's a lot of teams out there that would love to have that kind of firepower that those two have shown to this point.
Well, Kobe Brown, do you think it's just, Dennis has put him more in a role he's more comfortable with this year, or what do you think has been the change in Kobe Brown this year to last year?
Well, I think the experience plays a major role in it. He's been places. He's played in tough environments. Talking to him at Allen Fieldhouse before the Kansas game last year, he knew that was a big moment for the program. And I think also, and I'm not going to put these words in his mouth, but players know when they're outmanned. And they know when they walk into an arena and they look over to the other side, and those are the future national champions, and you're playing in front of a very mean-spirited and fired-up crowd. That was going to be a tough game for them, the Kansas game last year. And then talking with them on the floor before the Kansas game this year was just the excitement of having a packed house, which the fans have been great to show up multiple times in that way. So I think it's the maturity of knowing what to expect game in and game out. Having multiple trips to the SEC certainly helps. And I think the other part of it is we as fans and broadcasters and observers of the sport, sometimes we expect a lot really early, and we need to be reminded that sometimes it takes players time to mature and grow into their roles. The energy around this program is different. The energy of the coaching staff, the style of play, the energy that brings. And I think all of that is better suited to Kobe's game and has allowed him to flourish this year.
What do you like about Dennis Gates? He just kind of seems to have this charisma we were talking about before we came on that people just seem to be drawn to.
Yeah, he's got a very professional approach. All right. So mid-Missouri fans, way before your time, remember Tyronn Lue when he played at Mexico before he went on to star in college and then be a fantastic coach in the NBA. And Tyronn always carried himself with this air of, there are bigger and better things in store for me, even when he was playing for the team up in Mexico. So I think that he's got this air about him that suggests listen, this is bigger than just this game or this moment. We're teaching kids about life, and we're growing them into young men. And at the same time, they've done an amazing job. I don't know that I've seen this in some time of kind of circling the wagons, and they are all into each other. And there's this great amount of support with that team. You see it at practice with the enthusiasm they show. You see it at the end of games, the UCF buzzer beater. Like, there's this childlike enthusiasm, and that's the balance of that with Coach Gates' very professional, calm demeanor. It goes down, all the way down to wearing a suit on the sideline every game, which we took for granted forever until everybody broke out the quarter zips in COVID and post-COVID. So I think that aura brings a lot of energy to the program, and the style with which they play also has its own certain amount of energy.
Well, he's brought a lot of energy, like you said, to this program. SEC basketball, as you've seen firsthand, is a very tough conference to play in. When you look at the areas that might be a problem for Mizzou down the road or something they may need to focus on, what really sticks out to you?
Well, I'll go back to the Kansas game, and this is an area that's already been addressed and been fixed. We're talking with Bill Self after the game, and he was really surprised at the middle ball screen defense that seemingly wasn't there. And Kansas ran the same action time and time again and really took advantage of some miscommunication, some missed assignments, and Missouri had no answer for it on that particular December Saturday afternoon. A little bit more zone, they're more solid defensively. And while I said earlier that you've got to make shots in this league to win games, and that's absolutely true in all of college basketball, the reality is that the SEC this year, more so than any year I can remember, is a defensive league. 5 of the top 15 defensive teams, according to Ken Palm's defensive efficiency, 5 of the top 15 reside in the SEC. That's a third of the best defenses. So buckets can be very hard to come by night in and night out. You've got to be able to match that defensive intensity and execution on your end if you're facing a team, for example, like Tennessee, which is the best defensive team in all of college basketball. So that was an issue that needed to be addressed and needed to be fixed. And I think the introduction of what they've done from a zone standpoint has done a couple of different things. It's fixed that issue. It's allowed them to solve some of the defensive issues that they've shown. And it's, oddly enough, seemingly has allowed them to play more freely on the offensive side, right? If you're not worried so much about your guy beating you or the buckets that you just gave up, well, heck, let me go down and get a couple buckets of my own. And so I see that being a major transition that this team has made so far this season.
Oh, well, I'm curious to see how they grow. Obviously, as you go throughout SEC play, it's just going to ramp up more and more. I hope we get to hear you on a call for a Mizzou game here soon, Tom.
Well, thanks. I hope so, too, because I always look forward to my trips back to Como because I got to run by Murray's and Booch's and go out by my favorite places and stop by and see my mom and my sister. So, yeah, I'm constantly waiting for those emails to come through to update my schedule and for a trip back to Mizzou Arena.
We'll cross our fingers for you, Tom. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Anytime. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too. For the rest of you guys, we'll be right back after the break.